Today we will be doing the next part of this chapter. That's we will be learning about the different apparatus which we use in the lab. The first apparatus which we will be talking about is a beaker. A beaker is made up of glass. Sometimes it's also made up of plastics. And it can be available in different sizes, like you can get a 50 milliliter beaker, 100 milliliter beaker, even a 500 milliliter beaker. Here you see a 250 milliliter beaker. Beakers are used for the preparation and keeping of solutions. Okay. The next apparatus is a conical flask. A conical flask is usually made up of glass. It is used during experiments to hold sufficient quantity of substance. So if we want to carry out an experiment, we put these chemicals in this conical flask and carry out different types of experiments. A conical flask can also be of various sizes, with 100 ml conical flask or 500 ml, and here you can see a 250 ml conical flask. Now what you all will be doing is, you will take your copies and you will be drawing the picture of these apparatus in the copy. You have to draw a picture of a beaker, a picture of a conical flask, and you have to write the use of these apparatus alongside the picture. Now our next apparatus is flat bottom flask. A flat bottom flask is usually made up of glass. It is used for preparing solutions for different chemical reactions. It can also come in different sizes, like 500 ml flat bottom flask, 1 liter flat bottom flask. We also have 2 liters flat bottom flask. When we prepare solutions for the experiments, we use these flasks. Measuring cylinder. A measuring cylinder is a graduated cylinder, and it's used to measure the volume of liquids. So measuring cylinder also comes in different types of sizes, and you can measure the volume of the liquid and transfer it to the vessel in which the reaction is being carried out. Sometimes measuring cylinders are also made up of plastics. You will draw this measuring cylinder also in your copy, and the flat bottom flask also. The next apparatus is a test tube. It's very common in every lab, you will find it. It's made up of glass, and it's available also in made up of Pyrex glass. Okay. Test tube is used to conduct tests with small quantities of chemicals for heating and boiling purpose. So if you want to heat a solid substance in very small quantity, you will be using a test tube. You want to carry out a test where the amount of chemicals used is small in amount, you will use a test tube for it. Test tube holder. A test tube holder is used for holding a test tube which is too hot to handle. So when we use a test tube for heating substances, we cannot hold it with a hand. That time we need a test tube holder to hold the test tube and heat it in a flame. Even sometimes we use a test tube holder when we are pouring strong acids or highly concentrated acids in the test tube. You will be drawing the diagram of a test tube, but not that of a test tube holder in your copy. You don't need to draw a test tube holder in the copy. Now a test tube holder, you can see it's usually made up of a metallic rod with a clamp at one end and a handle at the other end. So that's how it's made. Sometimes the handle is also made up of wood. Test tube brushes. Now the test tubes which we use for doing experiments, obviously they end up being dirty. We need to clean them so that we can reuse them. Even other glass apparatus which we use in the experiments, we need to keep them clean. So we use these type of brushes to clean the test tubes and the other apparatus. when you clean these apparatus, you have to choose the brush according to the size of the apparatus. Test tube racks. Test tube racks are for holding and organizing test tubes on the lab counter. So you can see, if you want to keep the test tubes in an organized manner while performing experiments, you place them in these test tube racks. The test tube racks can be made up of plastics also. It can be made up of wood also. In most of the schools, you will find the test tube racks are made up of wood. Now, the test tube rack, if you use a plastic rack, you have to be careful. You cannot put hot test tubes in a plastic rack, otherwise that plastic will melt and automatically the test tube rack gets damaged. A watch glass. A watch glass is used to hold a small amount of solid, such as the product of the reaction. It's also used to cover beakers, and it's usually made up of glass. A glass rod. A glass rod is used to manually stir solutions. It can also be used to transfer a single drop of a solution. So, suppose you want to dissolve some salt in water. So you have to continuously stir the water so that the salt dissolves faster and it dissolves well. So glass rod is for that purpose, to stir chemical solutions. It's obviously understood, as it's called a glass rod, it's made up of glass, a solid glass stick. No holes out there, you can see. A funnel. A funnel is used to help in the transfer of liquid from one vessel to another. So it's used to filter and also transfer liquids from one container to another. You need to separate a solid from a liquid. So that time you carry out a process called filtration, and for filtration you use a funnel. So that time a funnel will help you to separate the solid from the liquid. And also, if you want to transfer liquid from one vessel to another, you use a funnel so that the liquid does not spill. It's usually made up of glass, but sometimes it can also be made up of plastic. You will draw a funnel in your exercise copy. You will also draw a watch glass in the exercise copy. A wash bottle. It's also called a distilled water bottle. It's usually made up of plastic. Here we keep distilled water, and we use this distilled water during chemical reaction. So whenever we want to prepare a solution for an experiment in the lab, we cannot use tap water, because tap water contains dissolved minerals. That time we have to use pure water. So distilled water is actually pure water. It does not contain any dissolved minerals or gas. And distilled water is, that's why, separately kept in these bottles, which are called wash bottle, and we can transfer that water through the spout, which you can see in the diagram there, in the picture there. A Bunsen burner. A Bunsen burner is used for the heating of non-volatile liquids and solids. So any sort of heating purpose you have to do, you use a Bunsen burner for it. It's usually connected to a source of a LPG cylinder, a gas source, and you light it, it ignites, and you use it for heating purposes. I don't expect you to draw a Bunsen burner, so a reminder, the diagrams of which apparatus you need to draw is that of a test tube, a beaker, a conical flask, a flat bottom flask, a measuring cylinder, funnel, a watch glass. These are the apparatus we expect you to draw it in your diagrams, because these type of questions will come in your exams to draw the apparatus and also to state the use of them. You should also know the material from which these apparatus are made.